right, we are going to speak primarily about VHF FM marine radio use, primarily from a kayak AUXPAD perspective. I've been using VHF FM marine radios since 1985. I started as a watchstander at Coast Guard Station Cape Cod Canal, and after a year I was on the boat as a coxswain, and when I got promoted to a desk, I started working as a ferry boat captain, and so a lot of VHF radio use in a whole bunch of different venues since 1985. As a kayak trip leader, and last 2021 was 7 days a week for a year on board the safety boat around the wreck of the Golden Rate. So I've done a lot of VHF transmissions over the years. Joey has graciously volunteered to monitor the chat and looking for people raising their hands. I say request hold questions to the end, but the presentation's a little less than an hour today. So if you put your hand up, Joey will interrupt and we'll address it there. I think we'll have a little more fun and things will be a little more productive if there's some good interaction. So my objectives for the night is folks will be able to reference what the communication requirements are for AUXPAD patrols in the AUXPAD handbooks. Students will be able to use the controls of a handheld VHF FM radio. Students will be able to list common VHF FM marine channels along with their intended uses, and students will be able to make transmissions related to routine communications, distress, and safety of navigation. And let's get interactive right off the bat, and Joey will read off in the chat. I'd sure appreciate it if you wouldn't mind saying novice or a little bit of use or expert use when it comes to using VHF FM marine radios. So everybody can jump into the chat box and give us a little understanding of where you're at.
Michael says he's experienced use. And then we get radio silence. No, Mike Maloney, very limited use. Jessica, a little bit of use. Just got her ham license though. Roland McDevitt, some moderate use in there. So a few folks. Carol and Joe Hostetter, Carol's a novice. Donald Rice is experienced. Guy Campbell has some experience. Good.
Good. All right. Well, like I said, feel free to interject if you have a salient point. We're not going to spend too much time on the AUXPAD handbook. Section F, the handbook, as you might know, was published in January 2023. Section F is dedicated to communications, and I've summarized that section pretty good here, I think. The first point being is that AUXPAD operators must carry a working, waterproof, floatable VHF FM marine radio. At some point I thought, well, I've got a lot of good VHF FM marine radios in my life, and they're not all floatable, but I recalled that there's some different manufacturers make waterproof life jackets for the VHF radio, where you could probably attach that waterproof radio that isn't floatable to big floaty piece of foam. So just an idea. Roland, do you take any exception to those strategies?
No, that makes sense to me.
All right. So order issuing authorities may require additional means of communications extra batteries, solar chargers, mobile phones, GPS tracking, text capable web applications. So lot of different strategies but to augment, I think, in many areas, at least in my coastal areas, to augment the VHF FM marine radio. The other thing the handbook talks about is prior to launching, you need to establish a guard with the station. If you're working in tandem with an auxiliary vessel facility or an auxiliary radio facility, prior to launching, you establish your guard. Once you're on the water, you're checking in with your tandem facility, the other kayaks every 30 minutes. Normally that would be in sight of each other. So I think that probably means just a visual check-in. And then you want to check in with whoever's holding your guard for the sake of discussion, the sector of the station every 30 minutes. If you lose radio communications, whoever's got your guard doesn't just go take the afternoon off. They're starting to worry about you. So the AUXPAD handbook specifies that you read and understand the particular unit lost communication procedures. Roland, any you or anyone to add with that quick summary of the AUXPAD handbook related to radio communications?
No, I think that's right. And, I've had that where we had some trouble checking in. We didn't have really good radio contact. And it wasn't long until I started getting phone calls from people on the flotilla that the Coast Guard was reaching out to them to say, what the heck's going on with these guys? So they take it seriously.
And I don't talk too much about the limitations of the handheld radio, but you very well might be in an area where you're having a hard time with your handheld seeing the radio tower, the receiving tower, but you just might have a cell signal. So if you have a backup cell strategy, especially if you know you have coverage in the area, that might be a good strategy.
Hey, Scott.
Yes, sir.
Michael wanted to bring up that along with establishing the radio guard, should also perform the guard 2.0. So wanted to bring that up.
And say that again, please.
Along with establishing the radio guard, Michael also wanted to bring up about coming up with your GAR number, your GAR score for the patrol.
Of course. Yes, thank you, Michael. And you guys have to keep me honest here, so I appreciate that. Thank you. So I just heard this term recently in life, late in my career. If you purchase a VHF, you can reach out to some folks who've been using them for a while. I have my contact information available, and we can talk about what might be a good radio or not. But when you purchase your VHF handheld, the first thing you want to do is RTFM, and I think they explained that to me, that stood for read the flipping manual. So each manufacturer is a little different as related to charging, how you adjust your volume and squelch, changing channels, scanning functions so you can monitor multiple channels, and locked functions, which I've found in a kayak setting particularly helpful, because I'm bumping things and I think I might be listening to channel 16 and an hour later when it's awfully quiet, I feel like I find I've accidentally moved it to 15. So lock functions. But again, each manufacturer, each model radio can be a little different from the others. You do have to spend a little time with the manual. And not that it matters. I've been a lifelong user of standard Horizon radios, not any better or worse than any others, but they're from model to model and from year to year, their controls, their interface is pretty consistent. So that's just what I've gotten used to. I wouldn't argue that it's any better than an ICOM or any other manufacturer, just the one that I've used. I will say that I've gone through life not buying the extended warranty, and my personal exception to that is with handheld waterproof radios at West Marine, because let me tell you, they're not waterproof. At some point, if you're playing in a kayak and in and out of the boat, doing rescues and submersing it and that sort of thing, at some point it's going to cut out. So I just save my receipt, walk into West Marine and swap out a new radio. So I found the extended, lifetime warranty at West Marine to be useful. The other thing is we're talking about using them in a kayak environment. Sometimes in the past, I've kept a working radio on my jacket, and I've kept an emergency radio in a dry bag in my day hatch, because at some point that radio being exposed to salt water is going to go kerflooey on you. So we've got a little demo here. I hope it works out, talking about how to turn on, adjust the volume, adjust the squelch, and select a channel. And that's on the little radio that I've been using, that I used on the Golden Ray when I was on deck and not in the cabin of the safety boat. I like to be able to communicate on deck. So let's see how this works. There we go. To turn on the VHF, I'll just push the button here on the side and see it power up. All right, pretty straightforward. Different radios, different ways to turn them on. To adjust the volume and squelch, first I'll put the squelch button once, twice, and then with the brake and just go up a click or two until it stops making that terrible noise. All right, and that squelch is just background scatter in the atmosphere. Nobody really knows what it is. I'm sure some of the engineers could describe it better than I. But if you've got the squelch going, first of all, it'll drive you crazy. And as it's actively receiving that squelch, that drains the battery faster than if it's receiving but not actively receiving. So keep yourself from going crazy and keep yourself your battery lasting a little longer. Go to the squelch where it makes noise and then just back it off a tiny little bit. There's over the years many cases of the distressed recreational boater in front of the Coast Guard station. Says they transmit Coast Guard help us, we're on fire, we're right in front of the station. The Coast Guard instantly responds, that watchstander right in front, roger that, we see your smoke, and we'll get a boat under. Coast Guard, why aren't you answering me? We're right in front of your station. The people have their squelch turned all the way up, and so they're squelching out all that good communication. So again, after you turn it on, adjust the squelch so it's making that static noise, and then just back it off a little bit. Does anybody have any questions about that for the newer, less experienced users? Somebody made a laughing emoji at one of my jokes, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. All right. To switch the channel, I'll simply go up or down, There's channel 13 to get to 16 quickly. A lot of radios have a button on them to go straight to 16. Okay, so we talked about switching the channels. Now we'll talk about what those channels are used for. Channel 16 is called the International Calling and Distress Frequency. And it's what the Coast Guard monitors. It's what Coast Guard boats monitors. It's what many boats, certainly many commercial boats that carry a VHF in the pilot house are monitoring. And it's used to call and establish initial contact and then switch off to a working frequency. And it's used to call for help if you're in a distress situation. So that's channel 16. Channel 21 alpha is frequently used for Coast Guard to Coast Guard communications in the United States. 22 alpha is frequently used for Coast Guard to non-Coast Guard units. You'll hear the watchstander once they establish a good rapport with the recreational vessel calling. They might say, "Can you switch and answer channel 22 alpha?" And so that Coast Guard to non-Coast Guard. Channel 13 is the ship's bridge to bridge navigation, and it's the frequency that commercial ferries and tugboats and larger commercial ships are also monitoring in addition to channel 16. And that channel 13 is used for a little bit of bridge navigation, but primarily used for ships talking to each other, vessels talking to each other, arranging maneuvering. You might have heard this is the inbound car ship to the outbound tug. We'll see on one whistle cap, and that's slang, if you will, for a port-to-port passing. But that normally would be on channel 13, vessels making maneuvering arrangements when they're within sight of each other. Any questions on that? Feel free to either chat or just unmute yourself and blurt it right out.
Scott, what qualifies as a ship? How big do you have to be a ship?
Your 15-foot kayak can be a ship if you're using it appropriately. A 21-foot recreational boat, any vessel, and we'll get more into that we've got some special guest actors coming in to demonstrate that. But that's a good question. But normally you wouldn't be making maneuvering arrangements between your kayaks. 21-foot center consoles are probably not listening to any radio VHF channel, and if they are, it probably is not channel 13. But if you see a ferry boat on the harbor, if you see a tugboat, if you see a deep draft ship, you can bet that they're listening to channel 13. I learned recently that the SOP of the active duty coxswain here in Charleston on the 29, he's not listening, he's not monitoring channel 13, but it's been my experience that the 41, the 45s, the bigger Coast Guard boats, SOP is that they frequently are, in fact, monitoring 13. Channel 9 came in 20 or 25 or 30 years ago with all the recreational traffic coming up channel 16, and it was introduced a team effort between the Federal Communication Commission and the Coast Guard as an alternate recreational calling frequency. So the idea was that you were recreational boaters and you called each other on channel 9 and you switched to a working channel. Well, since Coast Guard's not monitoring channel 9 and not yelling at anybody to switch to a working channel, they just go back and forth. It's been my experience just having a good old time talking on channel 9, which from my perspective, that's okay, because I'm a professional user and a commercial user, and I'm not looking at listening to channel 9 and keep them off my my airways. So any questions for that? And I asked a question, and again, chat room or blurt it right out. What other channels might you guys use? Michael said channel 12 for joint harbor ops, 14 the pilot station and the pilot boat frequently talk to the ships that they're going out to pick up. Anybody else with other channels? All right, 82 and 83 Alpha. What are you using those for, Geraldine?
When we're on the auxiliary vessel, that's the channels we use to communicate to our TCO.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to move on then. Thanks for folks getting involved with that. The dreaded Alpha. Simplex, duplex, what the plex, and certain frequencies, most frequencies, 16 for example, they transmit and receive on a single frequency. Certain frequencies are set up to use like a phone, and the transmit and receive can be same channel but on different frequencies. I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining that. It's not important. What's important is that here in the United States, check that your marine radio, your handheld radio, or your VHF on the boat is set to USA, and there another reference to reading the manual. And commonly, if you can hear somebody on channel 21 or channel 22, and they can't hear you, they've got their radio set to Canada or international. And so, it's pretty hard to do that. And normally they come from the store, from the manufacturer, set to USA. And it's not easy to do it accidentally, but I think you can. And it's not easy to get it back to the USA channel, just because it's not something that people in the United States would ever do in their lifetimes. And so if you see a little C or a little I in the window instead of the little U or the little USA, you check your manual and make sure it's set back to USA. At some point in the last 5 or 10 years, somebody decided that we're going to make it easier by calling channel 21 Alpha 1021. This old dog doesn't quite agree with that. I was okay with 21 Alpha, and there's no clear timeline, or I'm not sure of any clear timeline. The sector will still say switch and answer channel 22 Alpha, but you might have noticed on my little radio in the demo there was a little 10 in front of the 21. So. All right. So when we talk on the handheld radio, there's a transmit button in it. The idea is you push to talk, you talk, and then you release the push to talk button. And you normally keep the radio 1 to 3 inches from your mouth. You normally talk in a strong conversational volume, the kind of volume that I generally use, and sometimes my wife will remind me about my indoor voice. You want to slow down a little bit for the people in stereotypically in the northern, mid-Atlantic and northern. They talk a little faster than some of the folks from down south, but you're talking on the radio, so think about what you're saying and slow down. The dreaded wind noise. Does anybody, just hold your hand up if you know what I'm talking about related to the wind noise? The wind noise is when the wind's coming from this direction and it's blowing between your microphone and your mouth, and how does it sound? And finally, somebody will say, for God's sakes, can't understand what you're saying. But you got a lot of wind noise. And so what I generally do, talking on a handheld, is I put my back to the wind, and I might use my other hand to form a little cup in a little micro environment to avoid that dreaded wind noise. The other thing that I found in the kayak environment, if we're doing rescues or rolling or playing around in the water, the speaker and the microphone will get gummed up with water. And so I've learned to give a hard blow in the speaker and in the microphone to displace some of that water a little bit. All right. Some folks might know my friend Colonel Scott Brown. He's a U.S. Army retired helicopter pilot, big aviation in the Army. He's a level 4 coastal kayak instructor, and he's been going nuts on the rivers. He's just a paddling fool. And he used to tell his young helicopter pilots and other crew members on the radio, it's push to talk, not push to think. So think about what you're saying before you push the button, and then there's a silence, and you might or a little bit. Have it in your head before you push to talk button. Folks might know about procedure words, or they've probably never heard procedure words, but they might have heard the term pro words, and they're just some standardized words internationally to communicate a couple ideas. English is the international language of the sea, and all over the world, a commercial mariner needs to know some basic English. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I always make a joke. We threw a couple bones to the French. Mayday is come to my aid in French. Sécurité is the French way to say security, but those are the pro words. Mayday is imminent threat to life or property. Pon, something bad might be happening, or it might soon be happening, but it's not clear imminent threat. And pon might be the Coast Guard sector reporting an overdue. Pon, below all stations. 2 kayaks on a trip on Boston Harbor have been reported overdue. All mariners are encouraged to keep a sharp lookout. They might be at the restaurant, or something bad might be happening. So we don't know. Sécurité means that you're going to be transmitting, or if you hearing some navigational information. And I don't know about where it is in your neck of the woods, but I know a lot of the Cajun tugboat captains and mariners down south says, I ain't saying no security, and I'm just going to say security call. And so nothing wrong with security call. And in fact, they might think, wonder a little bit if you're saying security. He must have been a recent graduate of the Maritime Academy or something else. Over at the end of the transmission means you're done talking and expect a response. Out when you're done talking and you don't expect a response. John Wayne used to be able to do nothing but good, but he was a prime culprit of the over and out, which is kind of contradictory there. So no such thing as over and out. What do you guys think? And feel free to just break in or use the chat. Are those pro words important? Seeing a couple nods of affirmation. What's the chat saying? Whoops. Universal language, that's good. All right. Anybody? Does anybody think they're not important? Very important. Universal language. And any dissenters out there? the thing that was broke. Well, where I'm going with this, you've probably already guessed. If you're teaching people to use VHF marine radio in the future or at any point, it's not important if their boat's on fire that they remember the word Mayday and over. What's important is that they remember the push to talk and say, help, help. We're on fire and we're right under the Tobin Mystic Bridge in Boston Harbor. Where they are is the most important, and the fact that they're on the right channel. So don't be too hard teaching people about the pro words. Give it to them, but the main thing is that they're on channel 16, that their squelch is tuned down, that their volume's tuned up, that they're pushing to talk, and they're saying, most importantly, where they are. If they say help, I'm right under the Tobin Mystic Bridge in Boston Harbor, and then the boat blows up or the battery dies or whatever, at least we know somebody's not doing too good and we know where they are. So, all right, in the chat here, the out is most important. That's good because when people are bugging me when I was a young coxswain and I'm saving lives and fighting fires and keeping boats from sinking, and the station called and asked for my most current position and ops, I'd say we're in the same place, fighting the same fire, negative further out. Don't bother me now. I don't want a transmission. So, all right, good. So we'll just do some routine transmissions here, and I've got some high caliber guests ready to go there, and so we're just going to go through a routine position and ops. All right, so go ahead.
All right, this is a go. Coast Guard Sector Charleston. Coast Guard Sector Charleston. This is Auxiliary Kayak 1. Please switch and answer Q1 Alpha. Over.
Auxiliary Kayak 1. Auxiliary Kayak 1. This is Sector Charleston on 2-1 Alpha. Over.
Sector Charleston. This is Auxiliary Kayak 1. About to start patrol on Shem Creek. Launching from the Shem Creek County Landing to Crab Bank and return. 2 single kayaks, 2 souls on the patrol. We will be standing by on channel 16 or channel 16. Over.
Auxiliary Kayak 1, this is Sector Charleston. Roger, understood. Please maintain a 30-minute position and operations check on channel 16. Sector Charleston out. So I've done a lot of things on the VHF FM marine radio, but I've never called in an AUXPAD patrol. Roland or anyone with a little experience, anything to add to that first simulation?
A lot of people are not familiar with AUXPAD, so you kind of had to explain to them that you're the kayaker. And you know, some of the young guys on who are watchstanders are pretty loosey-goosey with their protocol, I would say. So it's you know, it's not always by the book on their end as well.
All right. Well, thank you for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about the young folks in the sector command center in a little bit.
Hey, this is Mike Gilman. I have a comment.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought I heard the person that was doing the ops and position report make reference to 2 souls on board. Did I get that right?
You might have.
We don't use souls, we use POBs, persons on board. It's a standard way of, and it's on most of the SAR reports and all. So we always make reference to persons on board 2, 3, or 4. and or the acronym POB. Thank you.
Right, and I'm just struggling a little bit that we're not confusing. I'm reporting 2 kayaks with 2 single kayaks, so that's two AUXPAD operators. So just to try to avoid any confusion, but yeah, I certainly take your point there. All right.
And Don Rice asks about the hailing. When hailing, don't we use 3 times the name?
The textbook is 3 times and then 2 times. So Coast Guard Sector Charleston, Coast Guard Sector Charleston, Coast Guard Sector Charleston. This is AUXPAD 1, AUXPAD 1 on channel 16 over. So nobody will gig you if you're speaking clearly and you know, do 2 times there. And certainly once you make a strong connection, then you can drop it to Sector Charleston, AUXPAD 1, right down the line. So yeah, some good points. So in our emergency transitions, we're going to indicate our position, the name of the vessel, and we want to use a clear position, ideally with the geographic reference and a latitude and longitude. And again, that position is the most important piece of information. And use caution with local nicknames that the watchstanders might not be aware of. So position's most important. What the nature is of the distress is, we're on fire, we've got emergency, we're taking on water, description of the vessel, number of people on board, and the Coast Guard will ask for some additional information. And so we'll do a quick simulation on the emergency transmission.
Coast Guard, help me, help us.
Vessel calling Coast Guard. This is Coast Guard Sector Charleston. What is your location and your nature of distress? Over.
I'm on the beach on Thompson Island with a group of kayakers, and one of our paddlers seems to be having a heart attack.
Distressed kayakers on Thompson Island, please confirm your exact location. Over.
We are on the beach at Thompson Island in Boston Harbor, west end of the island. Hurry, we need help.
Kayaker in distress on Thompson Island. This is Coast Guard Sector Boston. Could you switch and answer channel 22 Alpha? Over.
Sure, switching 22 Alpha.
Distressed kayakers on Thompson Island. This is Coast Guard Sector Boston on 22 Alpha. Over.
We're here, Coast Guard, we're here.
Roger, we understand that you are on the west end of Thompson Island in Boston Harbor. We are in the process of mobilizing resources, getting some help out to you. Can you tell me the number of the kayakers in your group? Over.
Sure, there's 5 kayakers in our group. Teddy is having a heart attack. Teddy is 61 years old. Is anyone coming? We need help now.
Roger, sir, please stand by and we'll collect a little more information from you. People in a real life situation, thank you, Joey. Give them a hand. Ah. People in a real life situation I get a little frustrated with all the questions, and we'll reinforce that in a little bit. But the calls might have gone out, and helicopters might be deviating from their training mission. Boats might be getting launched. In the old days, we ran down to the boats when the bell went off. We don't quite do it that way anymore. But want to get all the good information. Over the years, people have said that we have said that we you're going to get arrested if you transmit your VHF FM marine radio on land. Because it's a marine radio, and that's a silly urban legend or waterfront legend. I'm a naturalist, and with the dunes up and down the east coast of the United States, I'm forever teaching people about the importance of staying off the dunes and yelling at people if they are on the dunes. And if you're having a heart attack on a beach, I would encourage you to climb to the top of the dune to get that VHF radio antenna in the best place to contact help. So, all right. Security calls. It helps you learn where other vessels are, announce where you are. We talked about it could be security, or simply security call. And we'll watch one of the ships down at St. Simon's Harbor coming around the shipwreck of the Golden Ray. That's the kind of ship that capsized. And let's do that next one. And security call. This is the pilot on the motor vessel Golden Ray. We're inbound St. Simon's Sound in the fog to the port of Brunswick. We're standing by on channel 13 and 16 for any concerned traffic. We expect the Golden Ray will be passing by the St. Simon's Pier in approximately 15 minutes. Over.
Golden Ray, this is a group of 4 kayakers. We will be standing by at red buoy number 5, and we'll wait for your passage before crossing the channel. We will be well outside the channel. Just wanted to make you aware of our presence and let you know not to worry about us. Over.
Kayakers, this is the Golden Ray. Thank you for your call. Out. All right. So first of all, there's no red buoy number 5. It should probably be red buoy number 6. So if anybody was waiting to jump on me for that, I beat you to it. And it's been my experience that if you give a nice professional call to an inbound ship or an outbound ship crossing the channel, just to let them know that you see them, that you'll be waiting well outside the channel. And that's one less thing the pilot has to worry about on the bridge of that large ship. And the few times I've done it or heard it done, there's always been a little surprise in the voice of the pilot that they got such a nice professional call from the kayakers. So most marine VHF radios have weather stations. You just need to scroll through to find them. And scroll down the numbers to get the nearest transmitter. And
weather the area at the Charleston International Airport, it was partly sunny. The temperature was 76 degrees. The dew point was 53. The relative humidity 44%. The wind was northeast at 10 miles an hour.
And that's when I learned about the difference between an auditory learner and a verbal learner, because I'd hear that 5 times and say, what direction are the winds expected to come out from tonight, and how fast are they supposed to blow? So the weather radio can be programmed to emit an ear-splitting, heart-stopping, taken about 10 years off my life so far, alert tone for extreme weather. And some people are nodding their heads knowingly. And if you leave that on your nightstand and there's a test at noontime, boy, that's the worst time to get it, because you lose another year off your life for just a stupid test and not some fast coming thunderstorms. So, all right. Digital selective calling and GPS. There are some handheld radios these days that are equipped with GPS receivers and a digital selective calling button that automatically sends out the distress, your location, and who the radio is registered to. And this is on the final exam. The thing to remember is if you want it to work, it needs to be programmed. You need to find your MMSI, you need to register for it and then program it into the radio. And that's another read your manual. Wanted to talk a little bit about sector command centers. I've been in a few in District 7 over the last year. And the command centers are broken up into different groups of people that are in there at a time. The radio watchstanders, the people that are often talking and listening to the radio, very well might be junior enlisted. Sometimes they're auxiliarist. And as someone alluded to earlier, they may or may not know the AOR. If somebody says something that everybody else listening knows what it means, they might not know because they're new to the unit. And so that's who you're getting on the radio. If you have a qualified auxiliarist as a radio watchstander, then you're certainly getting somebody who knows the area and knows the lay of the land. So there's an operation unit and a situation unit that's doing some command and control and keeping an eye on commercial operations and the like. There's a supervisor in there. Normally it's a senior enlisted operations specialist. Sometimes it's a Coast Guard civilian, and they know what's going on, and they might grab the radio from the young radio man if he or she quickly deduces what's going on and knows how to resolve it. There's a SAR mission coordinator that's outside the command center, but in constant contact, and that's a trained and qualified senior member of the sector that's making some decisions and interacting with the district and other units for the SAR response. And then finally, there's something called the access active suspension, and that's a trained, qualified senior member of the sector who's the person who pulls the plug and says, okay, we had a boat sink and we had reports of people in the water, and a few days later we're going to dot all the I's, cross all the T's, notify the next of kin, and pull the plug. Very often that is the sector commander, Captain Cedarholm or Captain whomever. That's a big decision to make, and certainly nobody takes that decision lightly. All right. Rescue
Hey, Scott,
2-1. Yeah, go ahead.
Going back to the MMSI, I think Courtney wanted to bring to our attention that Boat US may program your radio for you for free.
They'll provide the number for you. You've got to figure out how to get it in your radio.
There you go.
All right. A little complicated whether it's a handheld or a fixed unit on a boat, and so we all should do a little research on MMSI's digital selective calling, because boy oh boy, we're getting calls on a daily basis that folks haven't registered their radios. So thank you. Rescue 2-1 is the command and control and communication systems that the sectors are using for the last 20 years or so. That system uses multiple radio direction finders on multiple antennas that provides lines of positions, and if they overlap, then we might have a pretty good idea where it's coming from. Not foolproof, and you've got quick and easy audio playback that you can hear it, and that more experienced watchstander in the sector command center might make some deductions based on reviewing the initial call. So we're running a little short of time, so I'm going to blast through the video here. I apologize for not warning you. Passing score is 85%, and you can use the chat for the end of course quiz before we get to the grand finale. Where can you find the AUXPAD communications requirements? And it can be a group effort, but somebody's got to get into that chat or blurt it out.
Workbook.
So in the comms manual, okay. Extra points for which section, but no, I'm only kidding. The AUXPAD manual section F talks about communications requirements. All right, well done. What channel is the international calling in distress channel?
16.
Okay, 16. Anybody not get 16? Okay, good. If you cannot transmit on an alpha channel, 21 alpha or 22 alpha, what should you do? No, Jessica, you shouldn't cry.
Make sure you're on the US.
Right, and how do you get it to the US? Extra points?
Read the manual.
Okay, good. Well done. What channel might commercial ships be discussing planned
13.
meetings? 13. Good. RTFM. Boy, you guys are doing great. Is it a big deal to suspend the search?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It's a huge deal, and I've been watching a recent case from, I think it was January, in the northern end of coastal South Carolina. A young duck hunter was lost in his duck boat, and the social media is like, oh, the Coast Guard well, the water was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and assets searched for 2 weeks, and people were complaining that the search was suspended, but they just don't know. And who does that suspension of the search?
The Commodore.
Sector commander.
The commander, yeah.
Sector commander or a very senior, one of his top 2 or 3 personnel that's been trained and qualified to be able to do that. And they do that talking to district. They often do that talking to the area, and they even sometimes do that talking to district, the area, and headquarters. So it's a big deal. What's a common misuse of pro words?
Over and out.
Over and out, negative further out. All right. Is it critically important to use the pro word mayday if the boat is on fire?
No, you can
Yes.
say help me.
Yeah, what is critically important?
Location.
Location.
Location for you realtors out there. Good. Okay, so you've earned the grand finale here. That magazine cover, Atlantic Coastal Kayaker, anybody ever, is that still around? I think it went out of print and then it came back online, but it was the East Coast Sea Kayak magazine, Atlantic Coastal Kayaker. In July of 1997, I coordinated a Sea Kayak Safety Summit, and we had coasties and we had pilots, and I brought a helicopter in, and we had sea kayak leaders from all over New England paddled out to Thompson Island, and we met in a series of classroom sessions. We toured the helicopter, and the grand finale up there was my boss and friend that I taught to kayak was an enlisted officer guy, and he used to be a rescue or aviation survivalman, and he went out and capsized, and the helicopter hoisted him up as the grand finale for that. So it was, I've worked with helicopters. I've been up in the basket and training a bunch over the years, and flown in Coast Guard helicopters. And it was a good thing, because I was out on a kayak trip in Charleston in April 20th, 2003. And if you're a weather buff, Tropical Storm Anna was the first tropical storm in history in the North Atlantic Basin that happened in the month of April. And you should know by now, I'm a weather watcher and trained by the Coast Guard in weather, and a lot of experience And I checked that morning, but National Hurricane Center didn't see it. The local weather service didn't see Tropical Storm Anna coming. So we got a couple guest speakers in here, and we will get started simply with Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is two kayakers in the ocean out of our kayaks in between Bird Key and Folly Beach. Over.
Vessel calling Coast Guard. This is Coast Guard Sector Charleston. Please say again the nature of your distress. Over.
Sector Charleston, this is Sea Kayak 1. My friend and I have lost our kayaks. We're in the water in the breaking waves about a quarter mile offshore in between Folly Beach, West End, and Bird Key. Please tell the OOD that we need a helicopter now. Over.
Distressed kayaker, please stand by.
Distressed kayaker. This is Coast Guard Rescue 14901. ETA to your reported position, 5 minutes. Please stand by. Over.
Sector Charleston to kayakers. Could you describe the kayaks, type of life jackets you are wearing, and safety gear? Over.
Sector Charleston, this is Kayak 1. We are two swimmers in the water in breaking waves and life jackets. Two people in the water. Break, break. We don't have time for your silly questions right now. Break, break. Rescue 1491. This is Kayak 1. You are hovering over the kayaks, not over us. Turn left 45 degrees and come forward 500 yards to find us in the water.
Kayak 1. This is Rescue Hilo. Okay. Over.
Rescue Hilo, this is Kayaker 1. You are right on top of us. No need to send the swimmer down, just the basket. Over.
This is Rescue Hilo. Okay. Over. Sector Charleston. This is Rescue 14901. Both persons in the water have been recovered. No medical concerns. We will drop them at the air facility on Johns Island, then RTB Air Station Savannah. Request you continue to maintain our radio guard. Rescue 14901 out.
All right. So a true story. I don't know who it happened to, but I was out with a new kayaker. We made a crossing to this little key, and it was calm, and it was overcast, and we sat in the dunes. We found a hollow without trampling on any plants, staying not climbing on any dunes, and we found a little hollow there, and we had our lunch, and we came out, and it was blowing 20 knots. And then it was blowing 30 knots. And by the time we launched, it was blowing 40 knots. And so that's how it went down. The Air Station Savannah maintains a helicopter 5 minutes away from where we were on Johns Island. And they were in the air doing pre-checks. They rotate the helicopter every 24 hours in crew. And they were in the air ready to go to home to Savannah. And they heard the transmission. And 5 minutes later from my 7 minutes later from my initial transmission, that basket was coming down. They didn't know who they were talking to, but when I told them how to move the helicopter to get to us, and when I told them we didn't need the basket, they just wanted to make things easier on themselves and go home. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I do have some suggested next check. Keep an eye out for the upcoming AUXPAD program. Purchase a handheld VHF. If you don't have one, read the manual and listen to it. If you have an opportunity to tour Sector Command Center and you haven't done it, it's eye-opening. And if you have some interest in modern history of Coast Guard search and rescue, read the terribly sad story that the National Transportation Safety Board reported out with the Morning Dew incident, and that sort of has changed Coast Guard SAR, and that happened about 20 years ago. So All right, so I've run over time here. But anybody who wants to stick around and provide any feedback, I'd appreciate it. Big thanks to Joey with his assistance tonight. There's his contact information. And there's my contact information. Roland and Joey have it, and I make myself as available as possible. So don't hesitate to reach out. So that's my presentation. I'd be thrilled for any feedback that anybody might have, or you can say out if you're ready to sign off.
Thank you, Scott. That was fabulous. Really appreciate your taking time to work with us paddlers and really bring, a lot of your experience with the Coast Guard to, those of us that have a lot to learn, I think, about the Gold Side.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure working with kayakers and coasties and fellow lovers of the water. Anybody else have any observations, questions, anything they want to share?
There's a question out there in the chat from Don Rice. Don, I'm not sure what your question is. I would be saying what about my kayak?
When they rescued him, did they rescue the kayaks?
That's a great question. That storm turned and accelerated up the coast to Nova Scotia, and later that afternoon things had sat right down, and Coast Guard Auxiliary found one boat. The tide had turned, was on the flood, and Auxiliaries found one boat in the Kiowa River there, and I got my buddy in his power boat, and we found the other boat. So after a short period in a residential program and years of outpatient therapy, my partner has recovered all right, and I just chalked it up to another time that they used to have an informal club called the Time That Scott Almost Killed Me Club, and that was just another chapter in that club. But yeah, we found the kayaks. She had just bought the kayak. It was an expensive fiberglass kayak. Her cell phone, her keys, she didn't live in the Charleston area, her wallet, everything was in the day hatch in a dry bag. And she's like, I don't care that I just lost, $4,000 in brand new kayak gear. My keys, my cell phone, my wallet, I'm dead in the water, no pun intended, but we luckily recovered it. Great question. Thank you.
So Scott, I have a question. Do you recommend that we change the parameters for the AUXPAD patrols to 40 miles an hour rather than 15 that we currently have?
No, it was, I've heard a lot of people say that storm came out of nowhere, and I tisk and says storms don't come out of nowhere. But Tropical Storm Anna, 2003 Charleston, do your research. That sucker came out of nowhere. So,
Scott,
yes, sir.
I have a quick question. I'm an inland lakes paddler in the middle of Pennsylvania. When I do paddle, and we have a power boat, it's kind of mothering for us. The 30-minute call-in sit rep, I usually have always in the past checked in with the boat, the power boat facility, and then they call it in to the shore-based radio guard rather than get two different ones or two separate ones. And, they're broadcasting with 25 watts when I'm only, I've got 5. So I can hear them, and I know everything they said is proper and correct. I could correct them if they missed something, but do you have any opinions on handling it that way?
Well, my opinion that it's just fine, and the fact of the matter is the AUXPAD manual specifies that that's an acceptable way to check in. So official Coast Guard policy, in my opinion, are are on the same wavelength, then that makes all the sense in the world. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question. All of the examples so far have been going back to a command center. And right now, and we're at the beginning stages of our program here in the Fort Myers area, but our station is currently being built. We don't have a command center. So whenever we're out on patrols, and not kayaks because we can't do that yet, but our crew member patrols, then we're just dealing with another auxiliarist that's our that's acting as our TCO. And I'm trying to put together a portable radio. So whenever we're out kayaking, that, as we move, has anybody else running into, you mentioned where you can't reach, the distance between them. Has that been a problem, or because I want to try to anticipate, and make sure that we have other arrangements besides a cell phone, because our station chief says he doesn't want us relying on that.
Well, so a couple things come to mind. If you are teamed up with an auxiliary power facility and working in tandem, that's a great strategy. The handhelds transmit at 1 or 3 or 5 watts versus 5 or 25 watts of the power boat. I don't know if your station is keeping a radio watch when you're underway, but if you're in the vicinity of the station, you'll very well find that handheld does have the capability to transmit to the station if in fact it can't reach one of the sector command centers. So a couple different strategies, or an auxiliary radio facility are a couple different ways. But I think you'll be surprised if you're in the Fort Myers area that between the station or the sector command center, my gut tells me you'll probably have good communications with them.
Yeah, like I said, the Fort Myers station is being rebuilt. There isn't anything there right now. And I'm just kind of wondering, as we are able to move, to different places with the mangroves, if we end up, coming into, dead zones, and then just double checking, making sure that it doesn't fall within, the 30-minute time frame that we would be expecting to check in. And I was just wondering if anybody else, around the country has had those kind of
Donna?
issues and how they've dealt with it.
Donna?
Yes.
As I said, I'm in middle of Pennsylvania, 5th Northern. We never talk to Gold Side. We can't. Well, we could with a cell phone, but we're so far, we're
Yeah.
literally hundreds of miles from sector Delaware Bay. Anyway, we've been doing it that way. Our rules are we need a shore-based radio. Somebody sets up a little folding table and a pop-up on a high point of ground, and they become our radio guard for the
Okay.
day. And whether we have 1 or 2 boats out, and we're so mountainous, a boat will call and say, tell us, whoever has the radio guard, say, we're going to turn and go up into Beer Barrel Bay. We'll be out of comms for 20 minutes. We'll give you a call as soon as we get back out of that area. We've done it for enough years. We know when we're going to lose radio comms, where we're going to get them back. And so, and then we have a backup with cell phones if that should fail, or if all of a sudden,
Okay.
why didn't they call back in? But we've been doing it that way for years. We do some state parks and Army Corps lakes, and the rules have been changed for us a couple of times. Sometimes a ranger with a shore-based radio can that has channel 16 or VHF Marine can take the radio guard with us if we give them an hour or so of training about how we handle ourselves. And then the following year, they said, no, you got to do it yourself, you know, so it's going back and forth. I think this year they're going to be allowed to do it for us. But the radio guard, the shore-based radio guard, they have to get orders, and you know, they get a mileage check as well because they're hauling a radio. So we've done that for years. If you have other questions, reach out to me anytime.
And what was your name? And I'm glad to hear that, because I actually have, I kind of did the same thing. I have I got a standard Horizon boat one, and I have a battery, and then I have a separate solar charger, and it's sitting waiting for DIROC's final approval. But exactly, it's in a rolled cart, and then I have a separate standalone antenna to do exactly that. So wherever we are up and down the coast, you know, then to just find a place with a canopy and, you know, ground it and set up and you know, and I was just wondering, you know, if that's working for other people, you know, so I'm glad to hear that. And if you can, what was your name again?
Name's Bill Turner. You want my
Okay.
email, or you want a phone number?
I'll look you up.
Okay.
From Pennsylvania, and yeah,
Yeah, 5th Northern, Division 20. You'll find me there.
okay, thanks.
Okay, are there any other questions that people like to raise with Scott while we have him? Well, thank you, Scott. I think that was great, and we'll get this posted and make it available to everybody so that they can get the benefit of your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent job, Scott. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Very informative, Scott. Very much enjoyed it.